Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Cash Balance Plans, an alternative for small businesses. I have just a few announcements for those of you who are requesting credit. Please note that to receive CE credit, you must remain logged in to the video portion of the webinar for the entire program. Logging into the audio portion only is not sufficient for CE credit. Continuing education credits are being offered for the following designations: CPE, CIMA, CPWA, CIMC, RMA, CFP, and SHRM. Also, at the end of the webinar, we would like to request that all attendees fill out the evaluation form that will pop up. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them through the question box. At the end of the webinar, we'll answer as many questions as we can, but we want to be respectful of your schedule and end on time. If we don't get to your question today, we will follow up with you afterwards. Tomorrow, you will receive an email with a link to replay today's broadcast. Let's get started. We are joined today by Dave Barrer, National Director of TPA Markets at Pentegra. Dave has over 30 years of experience in the financial services industry. His vast degree of knowledge and enjoyment for helping advisors better assist their clients and expand their practices have made him the go-to expert for 316 fiduciary outsourcing and TPA services. Dave, I'll hand things off to you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. Happy Thanksgiving. It's a lot to ask of you on a Tuesday afternoon before the Thanksgiving holiday. I appreciate your joining today. So we're going to talk about cash balance plans. They can be an attractive alternative to small businesses, in particular to small business owners to accelerate their retirement. It's not uncommon that we find a business owner who works very hard, reaches a level of success in their practice, their professional practice, or their business, and finds that they don't have a lot of money for retirement. And it's always, a question mark as to whether they're going to be able to sell their practice or their business and fund their retirement out of that. And maybe they've had a IRA or a SEP IRA or a simple IRA or even a 401k, but maybe they haven't maximized everything. So that's what we're going to talk about today, are ways to accelerate retirement. Our objectives are to have an awareness of when a cash balance plan is appropriate. We want to become familiar with why cash balance plans are paired with 401k plans. It's not just because usually a business owner has a 401k plan before they have a cash balance plan. That 401k plan is usually the first step after a simple IRA plan. But there are other reasons why the two are paired together. One should be aware of the roles and duties of a cash balance team, who does what. We understand cash balance plans and how they operate at a more or less top level, if you will. We're not going to dig deeply into the weeds today to actuarial determinations and future benefit calculations and that sort of thing. And we do want to talk about the investment process and structure of cash balance plans. So, where do they fit small business goals and objectives? I kind of highlighted it when we got started. Typical small business owner, and before I joined Pentegra, I merged my company with Pentegra in 2012. I had two partners. We had 35 employees, a typical small business, okay? And again, not uncommon that you reach a certain level, and you maybe you haven't put away as much as you wish you had for retirement. Of course, since we were in the retirement business, we were always maximizing our 401k plan. But that's really what we're looking for here today. So why would you consider that? Well, tremendous tax advantages and wealth accumulations. Most of you are probably familiar with 401k deferrals, and you're familiar with safe harbor contributions, and you're familiar with profit sharing in a defined contribution plan. Cash balance plans can allow much larger contributions towards retirement than can 401k plans. What we're looking at here is typically supplement a firm's existing defined contribution plan. Supplement might not be the right word, other than we're looking at this year, for example, $70,000 as a maximum contribution. And we're going to talk about maximum contributions in a few minutes to a 401k profit sharing plan. Cash balance plans, much higher contribution levels depending on someone's age and their income levels. In order to fit a cash balance plan, we need to know what an employer currently has, what their current contribution levels are, what the demographics of employees are, ages and wages and that sort of thing. But also, I would add, you need to know what the business owner's goals are. I think it's always great to start with, how much money do they need to sustain their current lifestyle in retirement, and what will their current retirement plan provide towards that limit or towards that number. And it's not uncommon for a business owner to think about selling their business at a certain point. What will that bring? Is there a ready market for their business? So we want to talk about aligning the plan with business goals, and regardless of the possible attraction of tax deductions and everything else, putting large sums of money away, if it doesn't align with business goals, if the business can't consistently afford large contributions, then maybe it doesn't align. If the need for retirement, we were on a call not too long ago with a cosmetic surgeon who she was trying to decide really when to close her cash balance plan, and we asked her the question. We said, "Do you have enough for retirement?" She said, "I kind of do." And so it was kind of getting to be a chore for her. She was going to continue working for a while, maybe slowly transitioning her practice, but she was thinking seriously about closing the cash balance plan because she pretty much funded as much or more than she actually needed. So plan choices, obviously, SEPs, simple IRAs, 401k deferral only, 401k profit sharing plans, defined benefit. These are the choices that are available. What's the right one? What questions do you ask? Here's a handy chart. If you do nothing else but stick with us today to get your CE credit, and tomorrow when you get the email telling you how to get this recording, this chart is a handy chart to keep and to know, who can establish what, who contributes to plans, maximum employer deduction, and so on. This is a great way to look at which ones to choose. Many factors impact the plan selection. Where do we start? Again, I think determining the contribution amount is often a good first step. It's usually where employers want to go. I personally think it's better to start with a needs analysis. How much does someone need? How long do they have to accumulate the bucket of money to provide for that need? But the way most business owners think is in terms of what can I afford? What does my business cash flow look like? So asking the business owner about their desired contribution level is a good first step. In this example, Linda is the advisor and Ellie is the business owner, and Linda says, "Tell me ideally how much would you like to contribute towards retirement each year?" Ellie's answer, and we're going to go through I think 3 iterations in the next couple minutes. Ellie's answer is important to know where to go. In the first example, Ellie says, "I'm not too interested in putting away more than $5,000 a year." So clearly, an IRA would solve for what Ellie wants to do. Now, is $5,000 to you and me really enough for retirement? Probably not, but it's what Ellie is comfortable with. And so obviously something fairly simple, something fairly straightforward will generally solve for that need. If Ellie wants to contribute $15,000 a year, she could consider maybe a simple IRA or a SEP plan And you probably all understand how those work. Simple IRAs are deferral plans where the employer can also contribute. SEP plans are employer-funded only plans. Think of a non-qualified, and by non-qualified I mean non-ERISA. Think of a non-ERISA profit-sharing plan. That's essentially what a SEP IRA is. It's IRS tax qualified, but it's not an ERISA qualified plan. $40,000 a year. Now we're thinking maybe still a SEP, but I doubt it, or a 401k plan. 401k plan, especially with profit sharing attached, and especially with a new comparability formula. If Ellie happens to be older than all or most of her employees, then new comparability would allow her to potentially get a higher contribution and control the amount of contribution or the cost of contributions to employees. $60,000 to $70,000 a year. Absolutely looking at 401k profit sharing. Might be a safe harbor with a new comparability design. So that we again, it depends on the ages and wages of the employees. But now if Ellie says, "Hey, I have excess cash flow of $200,000 a year," we had a similar situation in the last week. Employer and partner, two partners in a business with one other employee. They were paying themselves roughly $120,000 a year in taxable wages, or wages subject to employment taxes, which are what are available for retirement plans. And they said they had $500,000 pretty much per year in excess. They'd been taking it entirely as distributions from the business, but they didn't necessarily need to do that. And so the advisor worked to pin them down a little bit, and what it came down to was maybe the $120,000 of salary, $100,000 each of distributions, leaving $300,000 a year to fund retirement plans. And so we use that as a budget to do some allocation studies. Well, here's another example. I thought that's where we were. Yeah. Okay. So same example here, same idea here that Ellie has excess money to contribute. Here's another chart that's kind of handy. We provide this from a little expanded one through our marketing division. You can reach out to your Pentegra representative and they can get this for you. We update it every year. These are rough totals, if you will, by age segment of maximum contribution for deferrals, profit sharing contributions. These are 2024 amounts, maximum cash balance by age, and then total. So, and you'll notice even 35-year-olds can have a pretty significant cash balance contribution. Now we'll get into a little more weeds in a little bit, but remember that new comparability that we've talked about with profit sharing, as well as cash balance plans, they are they use age, the person's age, in a determining factor for how much they can receive in the way of contributions, or in terms of cash balance, or how much benefit they can ultimately receive. So a 35-year-old business owner may have employees older than they are, and sometimes that can work against you in this kind of a situation, because you end up with employees who are older than you, who actually get a larger contribution than you get. But we'll touch on that a little bit more in a little bit. So how do cash balance plans work? Cash balance plans are defined benefit pension plans, but they're different than a traditional defined benefit plan. They have a specified annual contribution. Older participants generally receive larger amounts. It's employer funded. There are no employee contributions to the plan. Plan assets are invested in a single pool. There's no self-direction. So these are truly employer-controlled, trustee-directed plans. Cash balance actually refers to the benefit formula. So for most of you, you at least know the basics of a traditional defined benefit plan. Defined benefit plans typically say, and we're gonna look at some formulas in a couple of minutes, but typically they're designed to say, if you work for us for X number of years, you will get a certain amount per month in a benefit when you retire from our pension plan, our defined benefit pension plan. Cash balance plans work differently. They use the math is the same, but the benefits, well, almost the same, but the benefits are expressed as a cash balance or a lump sum, if you will. So with a cash balance plan, instead of telling an employee you're going to get $500 a month in a life annuity when you retire at age 65, it will say at age 65 you're going to have a cash balance in your account of approximately, and I'm just picking a number out of the air here, $40,000. Okay, and that's kind of how it works. So traditional formula, this is what I was just talking about. Joe's a participant in the ABC Inc. defined benefit plan, and when Joe retires, his pension benefit will be 45% of the average of his last 5 years of earnings. That's a common traditional defined benefit pension plan formula. So whatever the average of Joe's final 5 years are, that's what he's going to receive in a pension benefit. He's going to receive 45% of that. Another benefit would be Chloe is a participant in LMO Inc. defined benefit plan. When Chloe retires, her pension benefit will be 2% of compensation times her years of service. So Chloe, if Chloe retires with 30 years of service, her benefit will be 60% of compensation. Again, very typical, very common traditional defined benefit formula. So Lizzie, we're at our first poll.
The polling question should now appear on your screen. This poll will be available for another few seconds for anyone who has yet to select an answer. Okay, the poll is now closed. Dave, you may continue.
Very good, thank you. So another example, the Acme Law Firm sponsors a cash balance plan. So now we're shifting to cash balance plans. The benefit formula provides an imputed employer contribution of 5% of pay and an imputed interest credit equal to the return of the plan assets. So remember we said that the trust, the plan trust, is invested by the employer, or they hire you, an investment advisor, to invest the trust for them. And whatever that trust delivers, that's the return in this particular example. So 5% of pay and a market return on the investment trust. Elizabeth is an attorney in the plan and earns $150,000 a year. Her benefit for the first year is $7,500. There's no interest credit in the first year because that's the contribution year. But here's her, here's what it looks like. This is a very simple example over the next year, okay, a couple of years. $7,500 in the first year, $7,500 plus $7,500 plus a $300 interest credit or earnings credit, so $1,530, and then so on, as you can see. In the first year, 3.5, and the second year, I guess it was 4%, and then 3.5 in this example that the authors put together. Alternative benefit formulas can be used. The employer can say the contribution for these age brackets, as you see them here, 3%, 4%, 5%, 6%, 7%, as a formula. Alternative interest crediting methodologies are available. Now, for years, and cash balance plans have been around for quite a while now, but for years, we always prescribed a fixed rate. And as you can imagine, the lower the rate, the higher the contribution, because by and large, adopting sponsors or adopting employers, they were interested in getting the biggest tax deduction that they could possibly get. So if we're calculating a maximum contribution using a 6% earnings rate, the annual contribution will be lower than if we calculate a contribution at 3%, right? And the IRS prescribes certain safe harbor fixed rates that can be used, anywhere from 2% to 6%. Secure 2.0 affirmed the use of market value interest crediting rates. And an example might be, again, Acme Cash Balance Plan earned 4.5%, and participants are credited with the 4.5%. Excuse me, that's in the that was earned by the trust. The market interest rate approach helps stabilize the sponsor's contributions. Under the fixed rate, interest crediting can swing in market returns, and we'll show that in just a second. The market return is oftentimes favorable because it changes. Changes in rates don't really impact the annual contributions. We're not going to go through the whole chart here, but the example here is this. The employer is comfortable making a $100,000 a year contribution, okay? And in this example, in this year two, with a 12% earnings rate, they can't really fund the full $100,000. They can only fund $92,000 because the market, or because the interest crediting rate was higher. Now that's with a fixed rate, but if we're using a market return, then that doesn't matter. We can just go ahead and continue to fund the flat $100,000 per year. Again, same example. If the plan document says that we're using a fixed crediting rate of 4%, and we actually lose money, we actually lose 0.5%, now we've got a shortfall to make up. And so the employer has to fund $118,000 instead of $100,000. So again, the fixed versus market rate, the impact is that the market rate allows for an employer to evenly fund every year their contributions. Now we'll explore some other features and look at the differences between defined contribution and defined benefit investments. But first, another polling question.
The polling question should now appear on your screen.
We're trying to get these in quick for you folks, so that because there's 60 slides, and we don't want you to wait till slide 59 to get your required polling question in.
This poll will be available for another 30 seconds for anyone who's yet to select an answer. Okay, this poll is now closed. The correct answer was B. Dave, you may continue.
Thank you. So again, Cash balance assets are pooled and managed by an investment professional or the trustee if that's the employer. Self-direction is not available. This is an important concept. I can't tell you how many times we've met with employers where there's two or more partners, and one partner wants to be more aggressive with the investment trust than one or both of the other partners, or several of the other partners, and they don't understand why they can't self-direct their portion of the trust the way they want to invest it, and we ultimately end up letting them know that, well, maybe the cash balance plan isn't the right thing for you. You can self-direct your 401k, you can self-direct your profit sharing, but you can't self-direct the cash balance trust. Although an owner or partners can certainly decide to be more aggressive with their with the cash balance investments. Had a physician one time who he really only intended to, he was in his late 50s. He really only intended to run the cash balance plan for about 5 years, and then he was going to retire. And so he wanted to be fairly aggressive with the investment. So he actually informally segregated the trust so that he was being cautious with his employee, with enough money to fund his employees' portion, and he was fairly aggressive with his own. Traditionally, the investment objective is to earn a rate of return specified in the benefit formula. And again, if it's a fixed rate of return, then the lower the formula, or the lower the target crediting rate, then the higher the contribution can be. Third polling question.
The polling question should now appear on your screen. This poll will be available for another few seconds for anyone who's yet to select an answer. Okay, the poll is now closed. The correct answer was A. Dave, you may continue.
Thank you. So contributions. Older participants generally receive larger benefits, and that's because they have fewer years to accumulate, a retirement benefit in the plan. Actuaries determine the contribution. So, very simply put, we're looking at a formula, and we are projecting contributions into the future to determine a future benefit, or working backwards from a future benefit to determine current contributions. Typically, the way this works is that an employer or employers will say, first, show me the maximum that I can contribute. Now, there are several maximums. There's a current year maximum. There's a level maximum from now through normal retirement age as defined in the plan. There is an increasing year contribution. So again, if someone is 55 years old today and we're determining their contribution, next year when they're 56, the maximum is higher. The year after that, when they're 57, the maximum is higher, and so on and so on and so on. So we can determine it several different ways. IRS compliance testing and reporting. Plan must file 5500. Participant notices and funding status are required. Plan has to satisfy IRS compliance testing requirements. The cash balance plans are, here it says, often combined with 401k plans. Frankly, they're always combined with 401k plans. The first reason is that most employers have the 401k plan before they have a cash balance plan. And the second reason is testing. So we don't satisfy the combined testing of the two plans with actual 401k deferrals, but we do satisfy the testing. Think of top-heavy and non-discrimination testing. We satisfy that with employer profit sharing or employer non-elective contributions, and that's the most efficient way to satisfy the testing. Here it says for best results, we're allowed to combine the two for testing. Very simple, rather than everything that's here on the screen. The testing is based on, we're trying to determine, do the highly compensated employees are they getting more benefit that is unfair, if you will, or an unfair higher benefit than non-highly compensated employees. So we project all this into the future, and contributions to the profit sharing side of a 401k plan, we are allowed to project those into the future at a higher hypothetical earnings rate than in the cash balance plan. So in the cash balance plan, let's say we're using a market return and the market return has been 6%. We're able to use 8.5% as a hypothetical rate in the profit sharing side. So younger employees getting profit sharing contributions at 8.5%, it requires less contribution, less money, for them to have an equivalent benefit to the highly compensated employees in the future. And that's the essence of the testing. We're projecting into the future, and on the defined contribution side, we're able to use a higher hypothetical rate than we can traditionally use, or than we traditionally have on the cash balance side. Another example of compliance testing, the 40-50 rule. This is your coverage test. So we know that with a 401k profit sharing plan, people have to be covered once they complete, at the minimum, once they complete a year of service. An employer may have shorter eligibility for a profit sharing contribution than a year of service, but age 21 in the year of service is the maximum eligibility rule that we can have on the profit sharing side. In a cash balance plan, it doesn't quite work that way. In a cash balance plan, we simply have to provide a meaningful benefit to 50 people or 40% of the eligible employees, whichever is lower. And a meaningful benefit is a minimum of a 0.5% accrual rate. Now I know that's kind of in the weeds. In a practical sense, when a typical combination 401k profit sharing plan plus cash balance plan, we are providing oftentimes a 3% safe harbor, non-elective, and somewhere between a 2 and 5% profit sharing plan for a total of around 7%, sometimes 8%, sometimes 9% to the non-highly compensated employees, while at the same time we might be providing hundreds of thousands of dollars in the cash balance plan to owners. We will commonly do a test where we'll calculate the total employer contributions, safe harbor, new comparability, profit sharing, and cash balance to the owners and the same for everybody else. And if we're seeing 65 or 70% or more of the total employer costs or contributions going to the owners, then you're probably accomplishing what those owners are trying to do. You're hitting them where they want to be. You're getting them the most for the money, so to speak. There's a plan permanency rule. In other words, the IRS. We get this question all the time. People say, well, sometimes business owners say, well, my revenue fluctuates a little bit. Sometimes I have great years, sometimes I have good years, sometimes I have okay years, and sometimes I have bad years. What if I have a bad year? Can I stop the plan or something like that? Cash balance plans are defined benefit pension plans, and pension plans are deemed by the IRS to be permanent plans. Now, that doesn't mean forever and ever. It means that generally speaking, you better be ready to fund a plan for at least 3 to 5 years, oftentimes a little bit longer. There is no written rule that speaks to this, but here's the practicality of it. When you terminate a cash balance plan, unlike when you terminate a 401k plan, you have to file for a determination letter. You have to formally terminate it with the IRS. And if you're terminating a cash balance plan within a year or two of starting it, there's a pretty high likelihood that you're going to get audited. And if you get audited, let me tell you what the IRS auditor is looking for. They're trying to decide whether you were contriving the cash balance plan as a deferral plan, and that you really had no intention of providing a long-term meaningful benefit to your employees. Now, in a practical sense, we rarely see an investigation on a plan that has been closed after 5 years. Occasionally, after 3 years, less than 3 years, it can happen with some amount of regularity. So that's why we typically advise, if you don't think you can fund this thing for at least 3 to 5 years, then maybe it's not for you. Now, conversely, we almost never see a cash balance plan last longer than 10 years, because again, most of the time what we're looking at are business owners in their late 40s, early 50s, adopting these plans, and they often skew towards maximum contributions. And in all honesty, you will max out the cash balance plan typically in 10 years or less if you're consistently contributing the absolute maximum that you can actuarially contribute. Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. So, defined benefit plans are subject to PBGC coverage. That's a federal agency that ensures certain pension benefits in case the sponsor goes bankrupt and cannot pay the promised pension benefit. PBGC premiums then are required on defined benefit plans, and that can include cash balance plans. Now, a defined benefit plan includes cash balance plans, but they are exempt from PBGC, excuse me, if they have less than 26 active participants, and the business is considered a professional service. So think doctors, lawyers, CPAs. Had a meeting this past week with a software company. They are not a professional service organization, so their plan will be subject to PBGC premium. Had a small oil company, a fella and his wife, his dad, and 2 other employees less than 26 employees, but they're not a professional service corporation. They own oil wells. They subcontract out all the labor that goes on at the oil wells. Had a cash balance plan, put a lot of money into it. They were subject to PBGC coverage. So those premiums are due. It does, interestingly enough, plans that are covered by PBGC have higher contribution limits. The combined limit is higher than if the plan is covered by PBGC or is not covered by PBGC. So on the one hand, being exempt saves the employer money, $100 or $200 per participant per year, more if the plan is underfunded. But professional service organizations that are not covered by PBGC can't put away as much as a plan covered by PBGC. Distributions. We've talked about sponsoring a plan. We've talked about getting money into the plan. Getting money out of the plan is important. Distributions are available at retirement age and separation from service. In-service distributions can be an option. We almost never turn them on at age 59 and a half, mostly because there's some labor involved with that. If you have employees who turn 59 and a half and we have to do a mid-year evaluation in order to pay them out or something like that. Qualifying distributions can be rolled to an IRA or a 401k. Direct payments made to participants require 20% federal withholding. Pretty standard stuff there that you're used to. So now let's talk about feasibility, but first, go to our last polling question.
Thanks, Dave. The polling question should now appear on your screen. The poll will be available for another 30 seconds for anyone who has yet to select an answer. Okay, the poll is now closed. The correct answer was D. Dave, you may continue.
Thank you. So where do they fit? Does a partnership have partners who generally have an appetite for more tax deferral than what is available in their, in their current plan? Will that deferral appetite be sustainable for 5 years or more? Is the organization willing to contribute at least 5% of payroll? Remember that quick and easy calculation I gave you earlier. You can think of it, 401k plan. If owners want to maximize a 401k plan, they generally have to be ready to contribute 3 or 4% safe harbor, right, to be able to maximize. If they want to maximize 401k plan plus profit sharing, then they generally have to be ready to contribute, a 3 to 5% contribution to their employees. Now here it says at least 5% with cash balance. You know what? It's never going to be 5%. It's almost always going to be more than 5%. But typically 7% is a common thread that we see, just because we see a lot of businesses, mid-50s, early 60s owners, and employees in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And maybe there's a 50 or 60-year-old employee here or there. That's not an issue because we can work with average ages for the non-Hileys. But this is what you're looking for. Can they afford something? Had a conversation the other day where the employer, we were taking over a cash balance plan, an existing one, and the owner said, well, the cash balance plan is just for me and my partner anyway. Now, mind you, they'd had the plan for less than a year and they hadn't even funded it yet. But their prior actuarial firm had led them to believe that it was just for the two of them. And I said, no, that's simply not true. You have to be prepared for some benefit to accrue to your employees. Medical specialty groups, law firms, capital investment firms, engineering groups, accounting firms, architectural firms. Notice these are all professional firms. That oil company that I told you about, the owner was an engineer. He was convinced he could probably do his own actuarial work for the plan and not have to pay us as much. He was convinced he could do the math. He probably could, but not because he was not a licensed actuary. He couldn't sign the 5,500. So we talked him out of it. But like I said, software company the other day. Lots of different firms. We've worked with plumbing companies that do not necessarily household plumbing, but plumbing companies that do industrial work, pipe fitters and things like that, where you have a company with typically an owner as an engineer, some good staff, but maybe 10 or so employees who might then employ lots of union people or subcontractors to lay pipe in large industrial facilities where they're building and constructing, things like that. So that's fairly common. How do we establish a plan? First, we look at sustainability. Again, we've talked about this over and over again. In certain situations, cash balance plan may not be appropriate. First we want to look at it, make sure it's appropriate. They may not need the tax deductions. The cost may be more than they can handle in the way of contributions. They might have inconsistent earnings. The labor force, if you have an owner, let's say you have an owner who is suppressing their wage and only paying themselves around $80,000 or $90,000 a year, and they have employees who are making at or near what they're making, and if those employees are their age or older, you don't have a good dynamic for a cash balance plan unless that business owner is willing to start paying themselves a much higher taxable wage. So then you get into a cost-benefit analysis. The higher taxable wage costs more in taxes. The contribution skews more towards their favor. Does the tax benefit outweigh the extra taxes, in particular employment taxes that they have to recognize? In order to do these plans, we have an actuary. Obviously, we have a tax advisor or CPA. I say get the CPA involved as soon as possible. The chart that I mentioned earlier that you can reach out and ask your Pentegra representative for, that chart that gives contributions for SEPs and simples and 401ks and 401k profit sharing and cash balance plans, that's a great tool to have in front of a CPA and say, think about your clients. Tell me who fits, who has the money to fit into that sort of a thing. 401k third-party administrator, typically with Pentegra, obviously, we're one and the same. We've got we are the 401k CPA, and we provide actuarial services. So we solve both of these roles, and then there's a CPA, and then there are financial advisors who are also who are bringing bringing the plan to market, so to speak. Finding the right CPA. Local, regional CPAs. We are a national CPA, but we have salespeople all over the country. So we have local and regional contacts for you. DCIO wholesaler. So again, the folks that all the big record keepers, we know them all. We work with all of them. We have strategic programs with all of them. Trade associations, I'll be honest with you, I have no idea what that means, other than perhaps going to ASPA, which we are a member of and a supporting member of, the American Society of Pension Professionals and Actuaries. I'll throw something else in there, and that is good to have a service provider like a TPA who is large and is going to be able to take care of you for a long period of time. We've been in the business for it'll be 82 years next week. Finding the right actuary. Actuaries are licensed and have relationships with national associations. Our actuarial team has, I think we have 6 actuaries on staff right now. If you're talking to a solo practitioner, you want to know what their succession plan is. This is kind of a related story, but it could happen. It could happen with an actuary or a cash balance plan as well. My sister-in-law drove to her mother, who is 95-year-old, drove to her mother's CPA a year ago. CPA unfortunately had died and had no succession plan. Someone else had taken over the office space, and my sister-in-law found her 95-year-old mother's tax records in a closet in the back room. You wouldn't want that to happen to your client's actuarial work. So pick a good actuary, pick one with a succession plan if you're picking a solo practitioner, or if you're looking for a large sustainable firm like Pentegra, pick one that's been around for a long time. Prepare a feasibility study. We do this. So you can collect census data, business structure and ownership, compensation, owner activities, and we will build you one or more what if scenarios. We will build you a picture of what will a cash balance plan look like for my client if they adopt one. We'll start with a basic premise, and the basic premise will be the owner or owners want to maximize their contributions, and they want to minimize contributions to everyone else. And that's where we'll start. And from there, an owner might say, okay, I get it. Now, I don't have that much money, so let's dial it back a little bit. Or they might say, I appreciate that you gave everybody the same, all of my employees the same amount, but this employee here, I want them to get more. I want to give them a little extra. How do we do that? And so we'll dial their contribution up a little bit. So that's the kind of thing we can do. That way, an employer can see what it's going to look like before they actually adopt the plan. It's always a good time to get started. This used to be the busiest time of the year because we were trying to adopt plans before the end of the year. You can now adopt a plan next year for this year. Not that I'd like to discourage any of you from prospecting or bringing opportunities to Pentegra, but you can adopt a plan in 2025 for the 2024 tax year. Now, saying that, remember I said earlier, and we talked earlier about the fact that the 401k profit sharing plan is paired with the cash balance plan. So the 401k profit sharing plan does have to have certain things in place for 2024 in order to work with a cash balance plan. Most importantly, profit sharing allocation has to be new comparability, and it might work best if there's a last day rule or something like that. But new comparability is critically important. It simply, it won't work without it. Happens all the time. We get a call in February or March. An employer wants to adopt a cash balance plan for last year, but they had a salary ratio profit sharing allocation for last year. It won't work. So that's something to consider. Plan setup. We prepare the documents. We help with we can help coach the investment strategy. We leave that to you though, largely. Help with communication, contributions get made. There's ongoing administration and reporting. It can be a great choice for many business owners. It can offer increased deductions and large retirement accumulation. It's not a one-size-fits-all. They are all tailor-made, and they can be modified, adjusted from year to year. We've got a few minutes left, so before I go to the last slide, I'll throw in here. What happens if the employer has a terrible year? Well, once participants have worked 1,000 hours during the year, the benefit is accrued and has to be funded. Now, the benefit can be funded at a minimum level if necessary, and the required funding carried forward into a few years. So there are ways to freeze future accruals to keep accruals from accumulating. There are ways to fund the minimum for a particular year. Now, the minimum won't satisfy the required funding. It's just that's the minimum to keep the plan from being disqualified. But then the remainder funding can be carried forward a year or two. One of the axioms of our business, folks, remember, is never do business with one of your best friends. Well, I had a best friend who had a cash balance plan with us, and he ran into some financial difficulty, and we had to freeze the plan and carry the funding forward, calculate the minimums for several years, carry the funding forward. It was one of those uncomfortable situations, but there are ways around what if something happens. There's no way to walk away from the funding. There's no way for it to be zero, but there are ways to solve for what do I do if something happens. Thanks for joining again. I know most of you are, maybe many of you are going to take off beginning tomorrow for the holiday. I hope you have a terrific Thanksgiving. Lizzie, do we have any questions that I can jump on here in the last remaining minute or two?
Yes, we do have one question, and that would be, can you exclude union or other groups from the plan as a category?
Yes, you can. Well, unions, yes. Other groups, it depends. So, there again, non-discrimination testing. If unions very, very commonly can be excluded without any additional coverage testing. Other groups, depends on what the other groups are. Let's say a business has 2 locations, and we want to exclude one of the locations from participation in the plan. First, we're going to do that 50/40 coverage test. If we satisfy that coverage test without including those employees, then the answer is yes. If we can't satisfy coverage by excluding those employees, then they have to be then all or some of them have to be included. So short answer is yes, long answer is it depends. If no more questions, then thanks.
All right. Thank you, Dave, and everyone who attended today's webinar. As a reminder, please complete the survey questions that will pop up on your screen in just a minute, and everyone have a great rest of your day.